In the past, we've interviewed Greg Nicoletos, who is the founder of We the People Will Not Be Chipped. You can go into our archives at brucecollinsshow.com and find those interviews here. Wes Fall, I believe I'm pronouncing his last name correctly, joins us today to talk about a new documentary called Predictive Programming and the Human Microchipping Agenda. Wes, welcome to the program.
Hello, Bruce. Thanks for having me on.
Now, did I butcher your last name?
No, that's absolutely right.
Great. I wasn't sure how the "you" would fit in with the word fall, but I'm glad I got it right. Now, Wes, tell us about We the People Will Not Be Chipped. How did you get involved with this organization?
In short, I'll just say the mission statement of the group, and that's We the People Will Not Be Chipped. We're the No Verichip Inside movement, or I should say No Positive ID Inside movement. And that's based on the irrefutable fact that mankind has inalienable human rights, and they're absolute and cannot be debased nor perverted. Human life cannot be degraded to a 16-digit RFID chip number embedded under your skin under any circumstances. And with all that, we also add, by uniting on this common ground, we can send a strong message to the IBM-funded Verichip that we the people will not be chipped. Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, Greg Nicoletos, we call him Greg No Verichip Inside Nicoletos. He is the founder of the group, and that started out in concept in 2001, and that was when Verichip first launched their product onto the NASDAQ. Officially, in 2003, the website went live with news feeds. There was the first short video, IBM Verichip and the Fourth Reich by Grand Chessboard, and I didn't meet Greg until 2006. I met him through MySpace. But just a little bit of my background with my involvement. I guess it was 1999 or 2000. I heard about the chip, and they were going by the name of Digital Angel at the time. And it really just sent chills down my spine. Discernment was hitting me with huge red flags. Time passed. We kept researching and researching. One thing led to the next. The rabbit hole kept getting deeper and deeper. Honestly, my brother and I, we lost a lot of sleep. We kept watching documentary after documentary. And it just got to the point where it was like, we have to do something about this. We need to get active, take it to the streets. The people must know about this. And I guess it was 2003, somewhere around there. We were in film school, and we took our research and did something with it. Began making a film called The Cashless Society and the Implantable Microchip. And it was basically, we found a local tanning salon. They had offered biometric finger scanning to pull up your account. There was another interview with a saleswoman for RFID readers, and she laid out the plans to get it injected into society, pun intended there. In 2004, we got the film finished, got it up on Google Video. I joined the No Verichip Inside group on MySpace, got to know Greg, showed him the piece, and he asked if we wanted to do some work with him. And so from there, it was Welcome to the Machines, Hypnotized in the Mainframe, PSA called Who's Better You, our first film, One Mainframe to Rule Them All, IEM, Enslaved Planet, and an Avatar trailer breakdown, and then now our latest.
Okay, so you did One Mainframe to Rule Them All. I remember we interviewed Greg for that documentary. Do I detect the audio of the narrator? Are you the narrator for the new documentary?
Yes, sir, I am.
I thought so. I thought your voice sounded familiar. Now, you have a new documentary, as we said, and obviously you're the narrator, but what else are you doing in that project? How are you and your brother involved in that?
We're the Fall Bros. We have Fall Bros Productions. Before I even mention anything about us, let me just start with the rest of the people that were involved, because without them, we wouldn't have it. The film's based on a great article that was written by Matt, and we call him Better Late Than Never. H is the last initial for his last name. Well, he wrote this article for the movement, and it was called The New World Order and the Microchip Agenda. And great article. So Greg starts brainstorming and gets with Matt, and they're like, hey, we need to make this into a film. Matt not only wrote, but he also came up with he provided all the clips, did all the media resources on that, B-roll. Greg was also on this piece, an executive producer, as he's been on the past. And then my brother, just in time for Judgment Fall. We all have these great names. Did the original score composition, graphics, audio mastering. I'm Wes, Ernest Contender Fall, and I did the directing, editing, some graphics, the narration, and all together we produced it, critiqued it until completion. And it was a global effort. I'm pretty wild, actually, because we have Greg in Australia, Matt in the UK, Justin and I are here in the U.S. So, since this is a global agenda, we're fighting it globally.
Okay, and this movie talks about human microchipping, which I'm sure people in Nashua listening to this are saying, oh, come on, they'll never microchip humans. And a lot of the programming that you show in the movie, it kind of shocks me. I've seen some of these movies and flippantly bypassed what the agenda really was. And this idea for human microchipping has been rejected in the past. So how are they trying to make this acceptable now to the general population?
It's a great question. I, too, when I was going back and looking at all these clips, I was like, man, I don't even remember some of those, subtly thrown in there. Matt did a great job of connecting the dots on that. But fear is one tactic that I've seen. After 9/11, they had a big push for it to get people to accept the idea. There was that family from Florida, the Chipsons, they called them. Jacobs was their real last name, and they were the first family to get publicly chipped. You've got all the kidnappings that are constantly blasted on the news, and many people point to chipping children as a solution to that. Then you have medical issues, people with Alzheimer's, dementia patients. They can't even really make a solid, independent decision for themselves regardless. Some would even consider this chipping against their will. But you have, diabetics is another way they could push it. You take a chip that senses your glucose levels, so you don't even have to prick your finger anymore. And then, of course, propaganda is another one to be able to get the general public to accept it. But I will say this. I've got another one, and this is just another example of conditioning the public that I experienced and witnessed in person. My brother and I went to this water park about a month ago. It was during the summertime. And we get there, and we give them the tickets, and they're like, well, would you like to put any money on your wristband? So we're like, okay, we don't have to carry around cash in here and get it wet and whatnot. And so they go ahead and they put a limit on our wristbands. You can get 20, 30, 40, whatever you want on there. So you go inside and you ride a couple rides. You start to get a little, parched or hungry. And so you go to get something to drink and something to eat. And you're like, yeah, I'll get a snowball and let me get one of those pretzels. And they're like, well, let me see your wristband. So you hold up your wrist and they scan it, and it docks funds from your account. So it's like for every for every little stand that you go to buy anything, they're scanning people's wrists to be able to get this payment received. So it's like just another example of conditioning the public is a way that they're trying to get the general population to accept it.
Wow. Now, I remember in your documentary, One Mainframe to Rule Them All, it pointed to IBM as being a player in the Holocaust, actually. So I guess my question is, who are the players today behind the microchip agenda?
That's another great question. Yeah, from the film, IBM and Verichip, the human microchipping agenda, One Mainframe Ruled Them All, we connected dots. We interviewed Edwin Black. He's the author of IBM and the Holocaust, and he really lays it all out. A little background on him and his story on that. He was his parents survived the Holocaust. I don't know if his parents were with him, but he went to the Holocaust Museum in D.C. and he's looking around and he's looking at this punch card machine, the Hollerith machine, and it has an IBM logo on it. So he's like, what's going on here? And he starts to look into it, and come to find out, Herman Hollerith made the punch card system, and this is the same one that we used in the 1890 census here in the U.S. And Thomas J. Watson, he leased this machine to the Nazis for 12 years. So you've got this number that was tattooed on the victims' forearms most times. It began as an IBM number. So fast forward to today, you've got IBM being the parent company of Verichip. They now, as mentioned, call themselves Positive ID. So instead of the tattoo on the skin, it's put into a chip and it planted under the skin. So that's definitely one of the main players, IBM. And we also show Raytheon being the manufacturer in the documentary. And I guess it's really hard to really narrow it down. And time is one issue that we have. But to name any other players would be to include those people who see this agenda as being a benefit to themselves. And it is, as mentioned, a global agenda that affects every human being on the planet. And it is key in successfully completing a one-world government where everything and everybody in existence can be tracked, traced, monitored at all times. So we've got many players governments, corporations. It's really hard to go into specifics
Yeah.
any further than that.
Sure. And I know when you look into a lot of these different types of things, a lot of the same names come up, which is very interesting. Now, this can't be all that bad. It's called positive ID, Wes.
Exactly.
So from a secular perspective, those people who maybe don't see this in the context of prophetic, which is where I might see it, why is microchipping bad for the average citizen? Although I don't know how in the world they couldn't think it was bad, but that's my question. And then more specifically after that, from a Christian perspective, why is this bad?
First things first, it causes cancer, which is a pretty big red flag right off the bat.
Yeah.
Catherine Albrecht, she nailed it down, and she did a study. It was called Microchip, Induced Tumors in Laboratory Rodents and Dogs, a review of the literature from 90 to 2006. And it was released in 2007. Some other ones, health issues, and this is just straight from, this is the FDA's letter on VeriChip. It was released on October 12th, 2004. I'll just read it. It says the potential risks to health associated with the device are, speaking of the VeriChip, adverse tissue reaction, migration of the implanted transponder, compromised information security, so it can be hacked. Which has also been proven, failure of implanted transponder, failure of the inserter, failure of electronic scanner, electromagnetic interference, electrical hazards, magnetic resonance imaging incompatibility, and the needle stick is another one. So that's directly from the mouth of the FDA there, tying in the rest of the health issues. Another one in secular perspective would be privacy issues. It's invasive, it's intrusive, it destroys privacy, it throws civil liberties out the window. I mean, this is LoJack for people. It's internal GPS, and every move is monitored 24/7. You can't turn it off. Then there's also the potential for abuse. Just looking back at history, as we just discussed, Nazi Germany and what took place there with data mining and numbering the victims. They made their list. They documented race, occupation, religion, so that when it was time, they could move with lightning speed and put their plan into action. Some people were okay. Some people were sent to work camps, and others, they were exterminated. So this technology's potential for abuse, it would be like what took place back there on steroids.
And we talked offline a little bit about transhumanism. We now have movies. Captain America was a super soldier, and
Sure.
all these other ideas that are coming to light in movies. For the average person, this must seem really bizarre. Then again, you're in the movie theater to enjoy the movie, so you're really not thinking, oh, I'm being programmed by watching these things. So my question is, how do these advocates of the New World Order use propaganda like in movies, which is a great example that you show in the documentary Predictive Programming and the Human Microchipping Agenda? Again, it's by We the People Will Not Be Chipped. Wes Fall is with us here today. And you talk about this, how they use movie propaganda to get people to accept these ridiculous notions, such as human microchipping. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all over the place. It's in the movies. It's on the TV set. It's on billboards. It's on video games, magazines, newspapers. It's online. It's encompassing us everywhere we go, sometimes more subtly than others. The films, just to name a few, Logan's Run, Time Bandits, Total Recall, Fortress, Demolition Man, Conspiracy Theory, The Phantom Menace, Casino Royale, Slumdog Millionaire. Some are predicted in a semi-futuristic way, and the whole thing of the predictive programming, when you get bombarded with this over and over again, you might not see them back to back. Like in the film, you do see them back to back, so it's connecting the dots, and it's more obvious. But when you see them kind of dispersed, they're just subtly getting into your subconscious, so that when it does happen, when it becomes a reality in society, then they're familiar with it, and so they accept it a lot easier. Some TV shows, CSI Miami, Fringe, Heroes, The Last Enemy, cartoons, South Park, Futurama, and The Simpsons, and articles. We document a couple of those, but it's kind of strange. I mean, when it is mentioned, on the news, it's very brief. and then it'll be, covered up with, I don't know, what's going on with Britney Spears, and
Yeah.
I don't even know who else is out there right now that they're promoting. But
one thing that I think your documentary also makes a really good point, and that is with reality TV. And it never occurred to me that reality TV is really promoting a Big Brother society, which